Let's start with a quick introduction of our guest today. So Laura has over 10 years of experience working as a writer, consultant, and a teacher. Most of us know that she's the writer of the award-winning movie Journey Through Pines, and she's also the author of the book Around the Script in 80 Secrets. She has a bachelor's degree in screenwriting and a master's degree in education and media. Over the last few years, she has been working as a script writer and script consultant with writers from various countries like Latin America, US, Canada, Spain, England, Egypt, Bangladesh, and of course, India, to name a few. A very warm welcome, Laura, and thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's wonderful to see so many people interested in screenwriting all across the world. Oh, look at all these people in the audience. I feel so very welcome here, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you. I would also like to introduce Mahesh Ravi, academic and creative head at Wiztoonz Academy of Media and Design. Mahesh sir has worked with America Online, is the co-founder of Paperbird Studios, and specializes in filmmaking and photography. I would request Mahesh sir to start today's discussion.
Thank you, Supriya. And once again, thank you, Laura, for being here at such short notice. And let's start with some questions. So first of all, we would like to know how or what exactly made you get into films and particularly into writing.
Well, it was a funny story actually, because I've been a writer my entire life. From a very young age, I developed my creative skills. I started writing short stories at the age of 4 or 5 years old, and I really loved to read and everything. I was a little bit of an introvert, so I spent my days reading and writing, so I developed that in a very early stage. But as I grew up, I thought that would only be a hobby for me. And since I went through high school, I said, okay, I'm going to go for a science career. And I did. And I started the university for a science career in chemistry and physics. But then after a year, I realized that I didn't want to spend my life inside a lab, even though I still love science very much. But I realized that I love writing more than anything, and I also love movies. And so I had a few friends that were studying already filmmaking, and I said, okay, maybe this is the way to go, because I love movies and I love writing. Maybe I have to write movies. And so that's how my career started. It took me a long time because you don't have here in my country, there are not so much educational institutions that have so many specific academic knowledge for screenwriters. They usually have a lot to say about directing and producing and photography and art, but there is not so much involving screenwriting. And so I went through my entire career in screenwriting, learning a lot of things except how to be a screenwriter properly. We don't have here those courses that you have perhaps in the US, like really specific about screenwriting. We don't have that here. And so that's when I decided I wanted to write the first book, the book that you can see on my profile, which is completely free, because I said I was listening, everybody was complaining about the same things all over again in movies and in the stories, and why the stories didn't work. And so I said, okay, I'm going to investigate this, because I didn't get to do it in university, so I'm going to do it on my own. So I decided to investigate and to say, okay, why do you think this movie doesn't work? Why do you think this movie works? What do you like of the story? What you don't like of the story? And so I started developing that book, which eventually became like a manual for students to learn how to be screenwriters without all the myth involved that no one, like very few people can do this, and you have to be really talented so you can become a screenwriter. I really hate all those myths. So I was debugging myths as well. And yeah, that's how my career started.
Well, that's an interesting journey. And you started writing at the age of 4. That's like amazing. Like, is that humanly possible, by the way? Okay, it is. And you have done that. Amazing, amazing. So I think we all searched for your book. It is out of stock currently. I think the book right now. We were checking it Amazon, and then it was out of stock.
No, it's no longer in Amazon. If you check my profile, there's a link there, a rebrandly link. It's going to take you to a OneDrive folder, and you can download it from there. It's completely free.
All
I
right,
took it off
awesome,
from
awesome,
Amazon.
great. Great, great. Thank you. We can do that. All right. So now, this question might be silly for you, but this is something that is useful for the layman. How would you define screenwriting, and how important is a screenplay or a script in filmmaking?
Well, the first thing I have to say about that is that I don't believe there are any silly questions. And I think it's a really important question that you ask, because I had to learn that in the hard way. Like, because here in my country, we don't have screenwriting so developed in academic studies. I have to like make my own way here. And I started to look up to the United States, because all of the things that they taught there in the United States were really helpful for me, because I didn't have them here. And for example, I realized that in the US, if you have a script, like before you can take it to a production company, for example, you have to have at least 2 or 3 script doctors checking on your work, or they are going to see and ask you how many reviews does this script have before it can go into production, because they obviously understand that there is no way that a first draft can make it to production without being corrected or rewrote or anything like that. And here in my country, people are like, they grab their work, and we have people who are directing the things that they write, and they want to produce the things, and they want to act, and they want to do the cinematography. So it's such an individual way of making movies, and I really don't like how that works. Sometimes in Hollywood, there's also like, because it's such a huge industry, there are a lot of pros and cons, of course, like everywhere, like in every place in the world. But it is the first industry, and they make tons and tons of money. So I'm guessing, okay, if I want to become a better screenwriting, I have to learn from the best. That's why I went to there. And even though we are like ghosts in the industry, like no one ever remembers who wrote what, it's very important that you have a solid story, a very structured story, especially for commercial movies. For example, yesterday I teach at the university here in Argentina, and yesterday the new semester started here after winter holidays, and they were saying like they wanted to do a short series, and we were saying like, I told them, okay, we are going to have to build a structure for this series. And there was this student who said, but if I go for the structure, I'm not going to be able to develop my creativity, because as you go for the first plot point or the second plot point on the climax and everything, it becomes like a formula, and that takes you away from creativity. But what I was telling her is that if we want to be communicators, and if we want to communicate a message, we have to understand the language that the audience speaks. Like, I wouldn't be able to talk to you here today if I didn't know English, because I have to understand that you are only going to understand me if I speak in English. You are not going to understand me if I speak in Spanish. So I have to understand that my audience speaks in English. So in order for me to give a message, I have to speak the language that the audience speak. And that is really important thing to understand as screenwriters, because we have to know who's on the other side and how do we have to talk to them so they can understand the message that we are trying to give to them. And for that, we obviously need some sort of structure. And this is not new. It comes from Aristotle, from the Greeks. It's like you need an introduction, then you need a conflict, and then you need an ending. Like, you have to have those things, because if not, the audience is not going to understand what you are saying. And of course, there are a lot of work who are more creative and more disruptive, and they work as well. But those people are usually very familiar with the rules, and they learn the rules so they can break them afterwards. So I don't know if I'm talking too much, but I think the answer to that is yes, it's really, really important to have a screenplay and a solid structured screenplay to be able to make a great movie.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. This is that's sort of like the backbone of cinema, I guess. So there is an interesting term that you have used here called a script doctor, and I've seen it in your profile that you have worked as a script doctor and a script consultant. These are very new terms in India because we don't have a job role like that in the film industry called a script doctor and all that. And usually, the script writing is not something which is taken that seriously here yet. I have seen filmmakers actually writing scripts, sitting there in the shooting sets. So let's say, what exactly is a script writer's or a script doctor's job, and how do they actually do it when somebody approaches you with a script, and what is your process of script doctoring?
I totally understand what you are saying, because here in Argentina, the role and the profession of the script doctor and the script consultant is not like well seen, because if they think here, the filmmakers, they think if you have to hire a script consultant, then you are not good enough at doing what you want to do, which is completely a mistake, because we all need to give our work away to other people so we can get feedback. It's like something that we just have to do, because we cannot, and we are never going to be able to understand how this movie is going to work or how this script is going to work unless we get some feedback from other people. So eventually we are going to have to let our work go. We are so immersed in our own story, in our own creativity, that there are so many things that we don't get to see. It just happens. It happens it also happens when you write like a book, a novel. You have to go to the editing process, and it's better if you hire someone who's a professional that can help you build your story better, because we are so immersed in our own story that we are never going to be able to be as objective as the story needs for the audience to like it and understand it. And so that's when a script consultant and a script doctor comes in, and as the name says it, a script doctor is someone it's like the doctor of the script, like literally the doctor of the script. Like if the script were a patient, then the script doctor would come in and make a diagnosis and provide solutions, like quote, quote, medication for the script. And so each case is different, of course, because each story is unique, and every writer has a very unique way of telling stories. But for example, the first things that are usually there are many common mistakes when we write stories, like for example the question how much description is enough description for a setting, for some actions. When is it enough to say to describe like a home, a setting, a bedroom of someone? Is it okay to describe like every little detail of it, or if it's okay if I only said there's a bed and a TV in the bedroom, because that's the only important thing that's going to matter in the story, for example. So we can have some script, for example, that has like this whole huge paragraph of description, which is eventually is not going to be important in the story. So that is something that you can work on and in your rewrite. it's something that you are going to be able to like reduce the information to the minimum to make the script more solid and more compact, so that everything that's there is important for the general, for the script and for the settings and everything. So, and then you have the other side where you have, I don't know, there's not enough description of the protagonist. For example, it says, okay, Mary, she's 20 years old, gets in the room and starts doing blah, 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 blah. And we have like no description at all from the protagonist, you know. If it's a secondary character or an extra, we don't need that much description. But if we don't have any sort of description of our own protagonist, the production companies eventually are going to understand that perhaps you don't really care so much about your own characters, or perhaps that you don't know your characters so well to understand. Because, of course, for there are some things that perhaps for your protagonists are going to be the same. Like perhaps I have a protagonist that it's okay if they have gray hair or brown hair or blue eyes or brown eyes. For I don't know, maybe that would be like indistinct. I don't have to write that, but a little description of that character will be good, because then we can understand as readers, and then when the actors come in, they understand that the screenwriters really know their characters. So there are some thin lines of what we should put in the script and what we shouldn't put in the script, and they usually work case by case. We have some sort of formulas for the scripts, but eventually we have to understand the voice of the writer and try to make it as better as possible. And so then as we move on in the reading, we can also see, for example, that some characters that were very important in the beginning, they are lost midway in the script. Like for page 60, this character is no longer there, and in page 90 it appears again and it solves the problem. So that could be something that it's not really very prolix in a script. Like we have to have a continuum, for example, of the characters and the protagonist. If we have a very important character, we should see him or her all along the story and not lose them like for 40 pages and then they come back. And for example, there are some times where we don't know how to say something except if I show it in a flashback. And so you only have one flashback in the entire story, and it's there only to show one specific thing. So that is also something that is not going to work in the general structure. So those are the things that as a script doctor or as a script consultant, we usually see and find in the script. And I also, I know a lot of script consultants that they only say, okay, this is not working, you have to solve this. But the writer perhaps doesn't really know where is the mistake or why is that a mistake in that specific script. So I always like to provide solutions or examples to make the things work better, because if not, it's like if I say this is not working but I don't explain why, then how am I going to be able to correct it? So providing solutions is one of the things that I love to do as well. It's not something that you have to do in your script, but to give an example gives the author and the writer the opportunity to understand how to make the script better. So yeah, this is a process of rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and you should never feel frustration if you have to rewrite the script or some scenes or dialogues over and over again, because it's just part of the process. So that's what I usually tell the writers, especially beginners, not to get frustrated when they feel that something is not working on the script, because that happens to the most experienced people of like everywhere, and they understand that this is a rewriting process, not just a writing process.
Thanks, Flora. That's a really, really new information and also very relevant for us because, as you know, uh, in terms of number of films which are made annually, India is the second largest industry in the world. But still, we don't have a position called or a job role called script doctors or script consultants here officially in film industry. It's not even there. So, but I feel that this is this is an opportunity, this is a gap that we can actually fill because a lot of script writers or wannabe script writers here in India are not getting a chance to produce movies. But instead of going and making that into a movie, they can actually get into this, script consultancy, and maybe they can get more exposure to already written scripts, and they can actually look at that. So it's sort of like, as you said, it's sort of like debugging an already written script and giving your suggestions and views and things like that, and you're seeing a lot of scripts by yourself, uh, until you gain a lot of experience from it, and you can create your own movie or get into your own production. So this is really, really useful, and I think this is a delta that we can actually fill. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that. So now, another question. Let's say now, getting back to your other role, screenwriting. How do you start your process when you get a story? I mean, like, let's say you have a story with all the things that you've said. You have a beginning, you have a conflict, and an end. How do you start developing that into a script? Because it's, you have to match your running time, you have to think about what is the scene that you need to actually extend, what are the portions that you want to sort of cut down. How do you actually plan this, and how do you move forward?
Yes, that's a really interesting question as well. I learned through the years that the most important thing that you can do when you start writing anything is focus on the structure. Because I was one of the rebels out there that said, oh no, I'm going to write whatever I want to, and if the audience doesn't get my writing, then it's the audience problem. And that took me nowhere. When I became like a true, real screenwriter, and I had to provide different work for different people, I had to understand that it was very important that I knew my audience. It was very important that I provide the structure. Those things were, I learned them like the hard way. I had to rewrite so many scripts, like so many times, because I just started writing. And I said, okay, let the stories flow and the ideas flow, and I'm going to see later where the story is going. That's not a bad way to start, but it's going to be a longer way to a finished script than if you start like by the structure. So with the years and with the teaching and with reading different scripts and everything, I realized that the best way to go, like for me, this is for me, right? It's not like it's a formula that everybody must follow, but I understood that it really worked. So what I do is I begin with the characters. I try to build like solid characters. So I have this little questionnaire that I answer, which has like really basic questions like, is it a male or a female? Is it a human? Perhaps it's an animal, a dog, or whatever. What is, if it's a human, what are their social status? Because it's not the same. Someone who is, I don't know, a poor person or a rich person or a middle-class working person, they're going to have different ways to express different cultures and all that. So what is their social status? What is the family? Like, do they have a father, a mother, a son, daughter, friends, a husband, a wife? What is the family, if any? Perhaps they are alone in life. So if any, what is the family? And then what's their profession? Of course, if it's a teenager, it would be only it's studying, or perhaps it's a teenager, but it lives in a rural area. So he's working with the animals in a rural area, even though he is like 12 years old. So I'm starting to build this character with all these specific questions. I don't even, like, that is the part that I let flow. I don't know what character is going to be out of that questionnaire. It's like, that is completely creative. I don't say, okay, I want to write a story about a woman who is, no. I just answer the questions and see where that takes me. And so I have, for example, what are these characters' fears, what are their motivations, what are their dreams. So I get a little bit deeper, not too deep, but a little bit deeper. So to know the character in a more psychologically and emotional way, I start to ask those questions. So maybe this character is afraid of 2 or 3 things, and perhaps they want to do something in life, which is, I don't know, very specific. Maybe they want to go to another country to visit a relative, for example. That can be very specific. Or they want to, I don't know the world or travel the world. So you can have like very specific objectives, and you can have like a more expanded and abstract objectives in this particular moment where you are building the character. That can work. And then it's very important that we have like a very strong flaw in the character, because that's what's going to make it possible for the character to evolve along the story. And it's usually going to be a really good idea that this flaw has something to do with this character's objective. Like the goal of the character. What is the goal of the character? That is something really important that we have to define. For example, if I have this guy who's in high school, for example, and he wants to become a lawyer. But his flaw is that he doesn't like to study, or he has so many friends and social life that that prevents him from studying. So as you can see, this flaw is going to make it even harder for him to become a lawyer, because he has like all these distractions, and he doesn't like to study. But he really needs to become a lawyer for some reason. So the flaw of this character is going to be something that as the movie begins, is going to turn into a learning process across the movie. And so we are going to have like the external goal, is this character going to become a lawyer or not? And we are going to understand like how is he going to deal eventually with his internal flaw. Is he going to learn to study? Is he going to learn that being so much with his friends is not going to be, that's not a responsible way to react to life, or something like that? So there we have a character. I don't usually recommend to go too deep into the character. Like I've seen some people go for 30, 40, 60 pages of character development. I don't think that's useful in very early stages, because instead of helping, it ends up like creating more obstacles to build the story, because then we have so much information that we bust our brains saying like, how am I going to put all this information inside the script? So I don't recommend that you go too deep into the character, but I do recommend that you have like these questions answered, and to build them, their dreams, their flaws, their fears, qualities. There's also a good idea if you can put in a character something that it's, for some aspects of their life, it's a quality, but for some other aspects in their life, it's like a flaw. For example, we can have this guy who's like brilliant sports, and he's really brave and courageous when it comes to sports, but he's really coward when he has to talk to a woman, for example. So this contrast inside the same character is going to make the character deeper also, and it's going to make the audience to relate better to that character, because of course, we relate better to characters that we see they are more like us than superheroes, you know. So if we have a character who makes mistakes and tries to learn how to live and all those things, we are going to connect better with the audience with those sort of characters. And so as I build this character, then I go specifically to the objective of the character, like what is going to be the goal for this character. I think that's very important, because the goal is what puts the story in motion. Like, for example, if I were with you, with all of you inside a room right now, and of course you know a little bit of me, and you know that I'm a screenwriter, and you know that I do a couple of things. And if I would tell you, try to make me feel bad, or try to prevent me from accomplishing my objective, If I would tell you to do that, like become my antagonist, how would you do that if you don't know what my objective is, right? So if we are inside the room and suddenly I say, okay, I must go to the bathroom, I must go to the toilet, then you can begin to act as antagonist, like this for a fun exercise, you know. If I'm just sitting there with you and you have to act as antagonist for me, but you don't know what I want, it's going to be like really hard to create a conflict there. But as soon as I have a specific goal, then it's really easy to become an antagonist. Like you are going to have, if you don't know what I want, you are going to be able to bust me or to become an antagonist for me in so many ways that, and everything is going to be possible. And that doesn't work when we are working on scripts, because again, instead of making it easier, it becomes more complicated. And so as soon as I get an objective, as soon as I get a goal, then you can start thinking of strategies for me, to prevent me from going to the toilet. Like you can block the door or you can shut down the windows. But there are going to be very specific strategies for the antagonist to work on the goal of the protagonist. So that is something very important. We cannot have solid antagonists until we have a solid goal. And we cannot have a solid goal until we have a solid character. So that is a really way good to go for building stories. You have to create a character and then you have to give them a goal. And then you can start creating the antagonist. And that is going to make you, you're going to start having like a few ideas and a few things are going to start popping into mind when you have this. Like if I have this character that he wants to go to another country because his father is there and he has to go over there, then I can start thinking, okay, so he's not going to have any money to go there. He's not going to be able to buy the ticket. He's afraid to jump on trains. So if he doesn't take the train, he's never going to make it to the station. And he's obviously afraid to get on a plane because he's afraid of heights. So I can think of all these possible conflicts for this person to be able to confront as soon as I know that his objective is to go to another country. Then I can build like these so many new antagonists. So I say, okay, I'm going to have this funny scene in the train station where he buys the ticket and he tries to get in on the train, but he's so scared of the train that eventually he misses it and he doesn't get on the train. So I'm going to have that particular scene. And I'm going to have another scene, and I'm going to have another scene. And we can start like building these different scenes. And then, of course, as we move forward in the story has to escalate, you know. In the first turning point, something has to happen. And in the second turning point, something bigger has to happen that compromises his emotions, like in a deeper way. And then in the climax, the worst thing that could ever happen to this character must happen there before we solve the story. So this is like a really, like when we see this as screenwriters, we feel like, okay, that's right, we are not going to be creative like at all. Like if we follow all these rules, then there's no creativity in screenwriting. But that is also not correct, because you are going to be able to be creative still there as while you're writing your script, without having to worry that your audience is not going to understand your story. So you are going to have a story that the audience is going to understand, and you can use your creativity for other very specific things in the script. And you don't have to worry about these structural things. Like you can have these amazing characters, you have an amazing introduction, and then the story just falls down, and no one in the audience understands your story by the end. So they go out of the movie, so they turn off the TV, and it's like, okay, I didn't understand this movie, this left me with no message, it made me feel nothing, I'm going to see another thing. So we don't want that to happen to us as screenwriters, as filmmakers. We want the audience to understand us, we want to make them feel things. And this is one of the many ways that we can do that, which is a very easy way, because you follow these rules and this recipe, and you can have a very structured movie. And then you can start working on the details as a creative screenwriter, and you can find your voice more easily. So yeah.
Yeah, there's an interesting process that you follow. So, this is when I actually thought about something. When, from your experience, the movie that you have made, in A Journey Through Pines, is actually adapted from a book. So, how difficult is it when you have to adapt a story from an already published book and then convert it into a screenplay? Because you have to consider a lot of factors there. You have to bring the emotions or the essence of the book into and fit into the running time of a movie. Another thing is that you won't be able to use the exact same dialogues which are used in the book, because the expositions will be more. There'll be more time given for the characters to develop over dialogues in a book, but we cannot take that liberty while we are doing a movie. So you cannot use the same dialogues, but you cannot actually create a completely new style for the dialogues as well. You have to still keep the essence of the book. How difficult was it for you? And can you just walk us through that experience of adapting from a book?
Okay, yeah, wow, so many questions. This book was the director of the movie was the author of the book, and it was also a book about his own life. So it was an autobiography that he wrote, and then he wanted to turn that into a movie that he wanted to direct. So it was like a process of a biographic. It was a biography, the book. So you have it depends on the sort of book that you have, the genre of the specific book, and for adaptation, we usually have to consider that we are not going to be able to get into the minds of the characters as we do in a novel, in a written work. When we read the book, we have everything. It's just there. We have the thoughts, we have the past, we have the future. Like I can say in a novel, I saw the portrait and it reminded me of when I was young and we used to hang out with my friends, blah 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 blah. And that it's only one sentence that says like a lot of things in a novel, and it's okay. That's something that you cannot have in a movie, because everything that we can see, it's only what is shown and what is said. So for the dialogue, for example, that's one of the things that you, for most of the part, that you can like copy and paste, because the dialogues are the same. It's something that if a character is talking, then I can film that and the character can say the same thing and it's going to be okay. We are going to understand that if it's a novel or if it's in an audiovisual. So the dialogues, you can, if you have to adapt a novel, you can go through the novel quickly and search for the dialogues, and you can just like copy paste that into a screenplay. Of course, you have the timing, and you have to show other things, and some things that are going to be shown. Perhaps you are not going to need the dialogue because you are going to be seeing them, and so many other things. But the dialogues is one of the things that we can work on, like in the very same way as they are in the novel. Of course, we can change them. We can change anything that we want. But that is something that allows us to work in a more specific way, like related to the novel. We can take the dialogues as they are and put them into the screenplay. That's what happened, for example, with The Shawshank Redemption, the movie that's based on this novella from Stephen King. Like the story is not so. They are not so much alike, the novella and the screenplay, but the dialogues in both, it's just like it's copy paste. Whatever was said in that novella is copy and paste to the screenplay, and then it went on the movie. So we can take the dialogues and we can put them on the movie. And so the other things that we have to consider from the novel is how much action is there in the novel, because if the novel is like inside the mind of a character, like so much, it's going to be really difficult for us to put that into a movie. Like I'm thinking, for example, like these thriller movies, if we have, or some thriller books, like we have to we are so involved in the strategies of the characters, and perhaps a killer or a detective, or they have to think so much that it's going to be better to read that than to see it in a movie. Or not better, but it's going to be perhaps easier because we can get inside those characters' minds. So when we have to adapt a story, we have to consider first the dialogue and then the amount of action that they are in the script, in the book. Sorry, so we can understand what can we put there and what can we not put there. So for this particular story, this guy was written like in a sort of a diary mode. So all of the books, most of the book were thoughts of this character. And so I said, okay, we have like such a huge problem here because we are not going to be able to understand everything that's going on in the mind of this character. So how are we going to make this a movie? So it came to my mind that perhaps because the whole plot of this book is him giving end of the story, you realize that he lives like a letter to his daughter where he explains that he was never good enough to be with his mother because he ends up getting a divorce, but the thing that he loves more in this life is his daughter. So he had all these affairs through life, and he had been with all these women, but eventually he understands that unconditional love can only come from family, for example. So I said, okay, we have this very important character, which is the daughter. And so what I told him is what if we make the daughter, when she's grown up, like she finds this letter that he left for her, and as she finds the letter, she starts to investigate about his father. So we have two sides. We have what the father is thinking, but we also have what the daughter is thinking and living and remembering about his dad, who's already dead. Like when she's big, he already died, but he left her like this message in a bottle sort of idea. And so she finds out this and starts to investigate the story of his father. So then you can have, through the dialogues and through action, like the different things that when he lived those specific situations, but also when the daughter is investigating that situation, you can have like a different point of view, and you can get another idea of the life of this man, because the woman, the daughter, she goes and talks to every woman that this guy ever loved, which is her mother. But so you can have these dialogues, like these compromising dialogues between a woman talking about my father in a loving way. So what is that to me as a character, as a daughter? So you can have like all these different scenarios that involve action and dialogue, so you can explain what's going on in the father's mind. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, it does. It does. See, this is again one question that I had in my mind, and I think most of the aspiring filmmakers in here also might have the same question when it comes to writing dialogues. And I think you have explained it, with the difference which, when you're writing different characters, how would you study the character and all that. But even still, when a filmmaker in here. I will tell you an example what happens when somebody starts or enters into the film industry and starts writing for cinema. Every character will sort of speak in the same way, right? Because it is actually the writer who is speaking, right? So we can actually see that every new films, every mainstream film which comes out, every character will speak the same fashion, and not according to their character. It's not according to their social stature, or how, where they are from. Are they poor, are they rich? They all speak in the same language, in the same way, in the same style, in the same, complex words, all those things. Now, as a screenwriter, how would you actually bring that difference while you are the person who are writing the screenplay, when you're writing two different characters? how will you bring in that difference? Because you have to still keep the consistency, but at the same time, through dialogues, you have to show that these are two different people. So how do you bring that? Is there a tip that you can give that we can actually use to break that sort of redundancy in dialogues?
Yes, of course. That's a very important question as well. So thank you for that. The first thing I have to say is that the dialogues is some of the times the last thing that you have to worry about in a screenplay, because the dialogues are going to be in continuum change, like they are going to be changed, and you, as you reread the script and you rewrite the script, you're going to find a better word, you're going to find a better way to say something, and you're going to have a different way of saying something. And then when you think that you found like the most perfect way to say something in the script, then come the actors and they say your script in whatever way they want. So that is something that we also have to take into account when we are writing dialogues, that it's important that they are there and they transmit the information that we need for the script, but the way that they talk, I mean, it's really important that they talk in a different way, and I'm going to get there in just a minute. But we also have to understand that we don't have to be frustrated when we think that the dialogues are not really working. If in the first version of the script, if they are there and they transmit the information that we need, that's enough. We don't need to overthink how things are going to be said, because as I just said, the actors eventually they have these huge egos and they're going to be saying the things in the way that they want. So you can go and say, no, please stick to the script and say the things as are here. And I work with so many actors. They can say, no, but they look to the horizon and they start with making big things with their hands and saying, no, but this character would never say something like that. He would say the things this other way. So that's a battle that it's going to be lost from day one. So you have to understand that the dialogues are practically never going to be like exact word for word throughout the script and the shooting and the end product of the movie. So don't worry so much about the dialogues in early stages. Now, when you finish these early stages and you go to the rewrite and you go to try to understand that perhaps you found out that your characters are talking in the same way, we as screenwriters, we usually believe all we have is our computer and we sit down there and we are alone and we want silence or classical music and please do not disturb me while I'm writing. But what the message that we are trying to put out there in the world actually belongs to the world, even if we haven't started writing yet. So what I mean with this is that we are the first people in the production crew of a movie that we have to go out there into the world to see what's going on. So we have to talk to people and we have to sit at some bar and listen to conversations, and we have to, I don't know, if we get into public transport, in a bus or in a train, just listen to what the people are saying and how they are saying the things that they are saying, because those are the people that are going to be the audience of the things that you're writing right now. So it's very important that you go out there in the world. And if you are, I don't know, away from everything, or the pandemic just hit and you have to stay home, you can talk to other people and you can talk to someone that feels most of the characteristics of your character and show them the work and say, how do you feel that this works? Do you feel like you would say something like this? Or how would you say this? How would you express yourself when you have to say something like this? What sort of language would you use? Do you think that the things that are written now, are you connected to them, or would you say those things in another way? it's very important that we use the real people, because they are the ones that are going to show us what's the difference between one character and another character. Even though if we have, I don't know, two women, they are both 15 years old, they are both from the same social class, and they are both in the same school, they are going to have their own specific differences when they talk. So it's important that we find those people and say, okay, I have this script. Can you read it? Can you tell me if you feel that you would say something like this, or how would you say it? There are so many people that want to help if you ask them this. They're not going to be like offended and say, you are wasting my time. No, they're going to take the script and say, okay, no, you know what? I think this is going to be better said if you express it like this, or if you do like this. So as soon as we understand that this is not a writing process, but a rewriting process, the sooner we are going to start playing with all these situations and these scenarios and talking to other people and perhaps listening to what's happening. And we can see, I don't know, there's a couple talking in a restaurant. What are they saying? What are they doing with their hands and what's the expression in their faces as they talk? And as you start to paying attention to detail, you are going to understand that there's so many different ways to say something. It's just out there. You don't even have to read a book. Everything that we need to know is already out there. It's just a matter of raising a hand and saying, okay, I need to know this. How can you help me? And there are a lot of people who are going to help you get through that. So that's one of the things that we can do. And the other thing is that sometimes we just put a dialogue in a scene because we have to explain something to the audience. And so you have one character that's all talk, and then you have another character who's only saying, okay, yes, I understand. And it's only more a listener than it's more a monologue than a conversation. That usually makes the movie to fall down. If you are going to put a dialogue in a scene, both of the parts must be equally important in that particular scene. And the more they are opposed, the better. Like, each of those characters must have their own goal as they arrive to the conversation, as they arrive to the scene. So you can have both parts playing a very important role, and you don't have only one person that's talking and another person that's listening. So that's going to make your scene grow also. And again, to be able to do that, you have to know your characters. So if I have a guy and I have a woman and the guy wants to break up with the woman, it's not enough that they go to a restaurant and he says, okay, I want to break up with you, and the woman just starts crying and that's it. It's not going to be good enough. That woman has to say something to say. She must have something to say. Also, she's not going to be to left the restaurant as the way she entered, and neither does he. Both of them have to change a little bit through that very specific scene. Both of the characters must be important. We also see this when we have the protagonist who's talking to a friend about a problem that he's having with his father, for example. So he's talking to his friend and he says, no, because my father, he doesn't understand that I want to do this with my life. So he wants me to go to college, but I don't want to. I want to travel. I want to see the world. And this character is expressing like every problem that he has with his father to his friend. And the friend just goes, oh, yeah, oh, no, I understand. Oh, yeah, but you know your father, he's just like that. That doesn't work. The character of the friend must have something to say to that. He must have something to say that involves him personally, like you complain about your father, but at least you have one. I don't even have one because my father is dead. So there we have an important character, and it's not only that I'm telling the audience what the problems of my protagonist are, but I am also comparing them to the problems of his friends. And that's very, very good idea because you give the audience the opportunity to have 2 points of view of the same situation in one scene. And that is something that only dialogue can give us. So when you are building a scene, don't make the character of the friend just a listener. Make him an active conversation.
This is an amazing set of information that you've given in such a short, paragraph. But see, um, all these things that you have said, it makes so much sense right now because, as I was saying earlier, right, when you see a lot of popular cinema, I mean, like, even in India or, mainstream Hollywood and things like that, every character speaks the same way, right? I mean, like, that is something that we know. And then something is already off when you start, seeing a film and you feel like the 15-year-old kid, the 70-year-old lady, and the 30-year-old guy is all speaking the same way. So there is no character study, there is no character evolution. As you rightly said, after every scene there should be an objective, and they each character should reach there by the end of that scene. And I don't think that's there here. I mean, I haven't seen that happening in most of the popular mainstream cinema around the world, I'm saying. The one filmmaker that I've particularly noticed recently is David Fincher and how he uses conversations, and it's brilliant. I mean, if you take films like Seven or Gone Girl or The Social Network, there is a lot of conversation scenes where you can actually see the tension rising because the dialogue, there is a very efficient dialogue which is actually going on, and you can see the character actually changing after that scene. There is some sort of evolution in the character. It can be good or bad, but they are changing. It's not like a parallel flow like that, but this is what was missing, but you actually explained it very clearly, and we have a clear idea right now on what to do now. So thank you for that, Laura. It was amazing and brilliantly explained. Thank you. Um, Now, just wanted to ask you, what inspired you to write a book around the script in 80 Secrets? And can you just say a few words about your book?
Yeah, sure. As I was saying, when the room started, when I finished my university, I immediately understood that I didn't get as much of academic knowledge about screenwriting as I would have wanted. And as I saw all these people in the United States and the courses and all these Facebook groups where they talked about the tools that you can have and the structure and how to build dialogues and everything, I was like, oh my God, like I would have really loved to have this knowledge from university. I mean, it was 5 years of my life, and I end up with only one feature script, which was like, I don't know, it was like crap from beginning to end, because the teachers were nowhere near of explaining us how to build a solid feature. Like everything that I'm telling you now, like build the character and then give them a goal and then put some antagonists there and start building conflicts that are more difficult to surpass as the movie moves forward. That wasn't there. There was no structure at all. And most of the people in the film school, they were also against all this Hollywood stuff, because they said, no, that is commercial cinema, and that's against creativity, and we want to do movies as the French people do movies, or we want to do movies as the Italian people do movies. And well, that was like something that I had to deal with when I was studying. So when I finished and I went to see movies, and then I said, I began to listen to people complaining about movies and saying, oh, this movie made no sense because, as you were saying, for example, just now, the characters are all the same. There is no difference between one character or the other. So I started to take notes of that. And I said, okay, we have one sort of problem. The characters are not talking all the characters talk in the same way. And then we have another problem. The story is solved in a completely like bizarre way that has nothing to do with the movie. Okay, we have another problem there. How can we make a movie be solved with something that has to do with the entire movie and not what we call in filmmaking Deus ex machina? Like when something happens out of the blue and it solves the movie, or when you say, oh, everything was a dream. So the audience hates that sort of a movie. So I said, okay, why does the audience hate this? It's like, then I understood that it's like you are misrespecting your audience because you are telling them a story and you engage them and you tell them that something is going to happen and you build up the tension and then everything was a dream. So that's a way to misrespect the audience. So I started to take notes of all this. So, for example, what's the difference between a short story, a mid-story, and a feature? What's the difference between theater and TV and filmmaking and literature? And I started to build all these little items, and then I started to investigate and develop those items. So if you go to the book and you see the index, you are going to have like all these little points, and there's like a page or two of information of that specific point. Like I didn't want to make a huge book, like a very heavy book, but I wanted to make something that you can go to when you have a specific doubt. When, for example, you are writing a story and you are in page 60 and you suddenly have writer's block. So there's an answer for the problems that you may be facing when you are writing that particular piece of the story there in the book. So it's a book with solutions. It's a book about the problems, the most common problems that we find, and at least 2 or 3 solutions so you can work on them. And it's also something to, it gives a general, like a landscape of the film industry in general, so that you can understand that if you like to work on some sort of conflict, then you better do one thing and not another thing. It's not a formula, but it's going to help you if you, as beginning in a screenwriting career, and if you want to write your stories, to have into account that you are going to be facing a lot of situations that every screenwriter face, and you are going to have there some solutions for you. So it's kind of a manual that you can read once from beginning to end, but then you can go and like ask for a solution if you have a specific question. That was the idea of the book. So I wrote it, and then I showed it to my university, and they loved it, and so we published it with the university, and in 2 months it got sold out. So I said, okay, this was really something that people were needing here. And so I put it over for free in the internet, because I said, okay, if everybody's reading this book, it's because there's a lot of people that was needing this information, so I'm going to put it out for free. And so then I started to work on the translation, and now that it's translated, I also put it for free, because in English there's so much more books out there, so many more books out there about screenwriting, but in Spanish there are not as many, even though some of the most important are already translated. But I didn't want it to make just another screenwriting book. I wanted to make a different screenwriting book, so that you can go to when you have a very specific doubt. And it talks about the genres, and it talks about the most common mistakes that we make as we write, and so on. So it was very well received by the audience, so I was really happy with it.
Awesome. Great. We're going to get it now after the session. We are all going to get it and, look through it. It seems like an amazing book. So let's say when we're talking about books, what is that one book that inspired you a lot as a screenwriter? You have read a lot of books about screenwriting and all that. If you are asked to recommend one book that every aspiring filmmaker or a screenwriter must have read, what would be that?
Well, Story from Robert McKee. He has a book that's called Story, and it's a wonderful book. It's quite a long book, but it's a wonderful book. I would say that every writer should read that more than once. I also have that book in my library, so when I have some sort of a doubt, or if I need some inspiration, I go and open it in the middle of the book, and he's going to give me an amazing tip. So that's gonna be one, and then the other one is the Screenwriter's Bible of David Trottier. because they are different books, but they all work on the like the secrets of building better screenwriting, better scripts. So I think those are the two greatest books for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Now, can we have some questions from the audience? Shailesh, can you
Yes, I'll
can
allow the
start? Yeah.
people like they can raise hands to take any questions. We are open for that.
Uh, okay. I think there is a lot of background noise there. So yeah, in the panel itself, if anyone has a question, please go ahead. Yeah. Shailesh, there is a lot of background noise. Yeah.
Hello.
It's clear now.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, like I have opened this. Like you can raise your hands for any questions if you want to ask, like Laura, regarding the script writing and everything.
I had a really basic question, but
Sure.
like, is script writing done in teams? Like, do you collaborate with different writers, and like a particular writer is handling a character and the other writer is handling a different character? So, how does that collaboration work if it's done in teams?
Well, that is one question I don't have an answer for because I have never written anything with anyone, which is something that I'm trying to change now because I'm working on a specific sort of script that I need some sort of knowledge that I don't have. So I'm going to be asking for help soon enough. But I think I know some other people who have worked in pairs like for their entire career, and it has its pros and cons, as they say, because you have to really understand the other person that you're writing with. You have to have like a common idea of what the story should be about, and you have to understand that in a collaboration, you have to put your ego aside, and you have to understand that the things that you do are going to be, you are going to be collaborating with others, which is, I think it's a very good practice because filmmaking is in itself a collaboration process. So I don't know what it is, but I'm going to find out very soon because I would really like to go through that experience.
Cool. Like, I always thought like we as a writer would have a lot of biases. So how would we manage that when we are working together? When we have two or three writers working on one script. So that's something we can figure out. Thank you for that. Even the little example was there, so that was helpful.
Yeah. What I did have once was the opportunity to be a script supervisor of a writer of tables. So they were all writing a very specific part of the series, and I was the one in charge of taking all that knowledge and put it in the specific script that we were building. And it was an amazing thing to watch from the outside because I had, like, for example, one writer was like really great at making dialogues, at building dialogues. And another character was really great at imagining, bizarre situation to put the characters in. So as they started to work in the things that they were better at, the story began to grow like so much because he said, okay, I'm going to put these two characters on a bus who's about to crash. And so the other one came and said, okay, leave me that to me. I'm going to build the dialogue there. And then the other writer would come and say, okay, I'm going to be the fireman. I'm going to write about the fireman who's going to come and rescue all these people from inside this bus. And so it was really fascinating to grasp all these very little pieces of the information of every writer and put it together in a story. Of course, we had to talk first. It's not like it was creative writing and nothing was structured or whatever. I would go and say to them, okay, you have to write the dialogue of this particular scene. And since they all knew the characters, it was like a very good work, like a collaborative work, like real collaborative, because it was like 6 writers. So that was like a wonderful thing, a wonderful experience to go through. But I think you need to have a supervisor in a situation like that, because if you have 2 writers, it's easier. But if you have 6 or 7 writers, it's going to be more difficult. Okay, so what to leave, what to take out, and the role of the supervisor is eventually needed for that specific. But I think it's really interesting. And as we usually say, more brains think better than just one brain. So for the creative process, it's also a great idea to have more brains involved in it.
Definitely. And yeah, as you said, a need for a leader to actually, a lead scriptwriter to be there. That's necessary, because if we are there just with our biases, we'll just be fighting over, okay, this is something that should work. No, this should work. So until at last there should be someone who has a particular view of the story and they know what's best for that, and accordingly they are managing it. So yeah, that's a good structure and something I'd like to experience as well. And thank you for sharing that, ma'am.
In the same context, actually, I too have a question. Like, have you faced any difficulties in the last moment, like for a change in the script or something? Like after you have finalized the whole script and someone asks for some changes, like have you faced any of these difficulties in your career of script writing?
I'm sorry, Sailesh, I hear you so low. I can't understand what you are saying.
Yeah, I think your
Can you hear
volume
me
was,
now?
yeah.
Can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me, Laura, right now? It's okay? It's
Yes,
audible?
yes, it is loud. Yeah.
A little bit better.
Okay. I was asking, like, have you faced any difficulties, like, while finalizing a script, like, you had a problem, like, in the last moment, someone would come and ask, like, can you change that and can you change this? Did you face any of these kind of issues while script writing and, like, at finalizing things?
Um, Well, yeah. One of the things that it took me a lot of years to understand as well is that this what I was just saying just to Mohit, that this is a collaborative process, and eventually it's going to happen a lot of times that the screenwriter is not going to have the last decision of the things that you are doing. If it's a work for hire, I mean, I don't care about it. It's because I'm writing something that someone paid me to do. So the things that you want me to change, I'm going to change them, and that's it. Okay, we are going to be great. But then you have this like your own scripts, like the ones that you write from your heart and the ones that you work on with for so long and everything. And then you have to give that away because, I don't know, someone optioned your script and they are going to make it a movie. And it happened, for example.
Harshit, can you please mute your mic?
Sorry. With the Journey Through Pines, for example, there were some things that I wrote in the script that for me they were very important for the general structure of the story, and then the director just decided not to put them there. And then he said, for example, okay, I want you to change some of these things and make it different. And even though I didn't like it much, I liked the previous version better. I mean, it wasn't my script. This was his story and his book and his autobiography, to say the least. So he was the one who was in charge of that. But eventually, as screenwriters, if you are not going to be directing your own stuff, you have to understand that the person that takes your script, first of all, if they take your script, it's because they see that something works in it. So it's not that they're going to change everything from the script, but sometimes they do have to change a few things, and okay, it's going to be up to you, like if you want to change it and go on with the movie and go on with the production, or perhaps you can go and say, okay, no, this is not the idea of this screenplay. I don't want to give in on this particular situation because you are going the exact opposite way as the way I want it to go, for example. So I think it's case by case. In every screenplay, there's a different answer for that.
Thank you for that, Laura. Rohit, are you gonna ask any questions to Laura? Like, do you have any questions?
Yes. I have a
Okay,
question.
go.
Last time, one of my recent film, it was like 50 minutes, and in that, yeah, people loved it and everything. It did well in my film school film festival, but I was very unhappy about my protagonist, and so I think I kind of failed in succeeding the depth of the character I wanted to give. So my question is how to make audience feel for our character and how to make them feel the depth we're intending to throw our main character. So this is my question.
Okay, yes, that is a very important question, and I think every writer and every filmmaker asks that question. It's very important. Like it's daunting, like how am I going to make the audience feel the things that I want them to feel? And even though it's just a case-by-case scenario, because we cannot understand, as long as we try, we can try to put ourselves in the shoes of our audience, but every person is going to be different. So every person is going to see your movie with their own set of glasses, according to their life experience, according to the things that they lived. Some of the things in the movie are going to call their attention, and for other people, maybe some other stuff is going to call their attention. But we have a few secrets to consider, and one of them is that in our brains, the things that attach more to our memory are the things that are related to the emotions. And luckily, we have 5 or 6 primary emotions, which are the emotions that are shown in the movie Inside Out. I don't know if you saw that animation movie from Pixar, but they work with fear, joy, anger, disgust, and sadness, and those are the primary emotions that everybody around the world feel, no matter their society, no matter their culture, no matter their age. There are brain studies that confirm that from 1 or 2 months as we are alive in this world as little babies, we are already understanding and feeling those primary emotions. So that's something that makes us humans, all of us. So if we work with those emotions in our scripts and we make the characters feel these very specific things, it's something that it's going to connect with the audience, because I perhaps don't know this character, I don't speak his language, I don't understand their culture, but it's his feeling, he's angry because some unjust situation that he had to live, that I'm going to understand. So we can put our characters in situations that make them go through these specific emotions, and the audience is going to connect with them. So that's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That was a great answer. Anyone else would like to ask anything?
Laura, I just have one more question. So, this is just based on the current scenario, whatever is happening right now. There is a lot of pandemic, and then a lot of movie industries are not, it's not 100% functional right now, because movies they are forced to release their movies on OTT platforms um, Amazon and things like that. So, is that going to affect the movie industry seriously, or do you have to change your format in the way that you write script? Because depending on the medium, films are being compromised. So, what is your view on that?
Well, even though the industry is changing, I don't think that storytelling is something that is going to die. We've been having storytelling since the beginning of times, and when the cinema appeared in the late 1800s, and when movies came along and they first said, okay, this is not going to work, this is just a temporary attraction, and when they said it was coming here to stay, they said, okay, this is going to kill theater. And then it didn't happen. Then you still had theater, and you still have theater up to these days. And then when TV came on, they said, okay, now the movies are going to be killed, and also theater is going to die. And that didn't happen anyway. So we see these on-demand movies, and we have all these streaming services, and it's almost like cable again. Like we have all these channels that we can move over to, but eventually the content is going to be, it has to be quality content, no matter the format, no matter the distribution that you can get of it. You have to have a solid story with a solid structure, with solid characters, and you have to make them connect emotionally with the audience. I mean, you have to have those things, no matter where you put your movie. Because now we can see how many, like, all these awful movies and series are there in these streaming services. And the ones that become really famous are not because they are done by Steven Spielberg or they are done by some known guy or woman. It's because they work. The things that we see that become famous, or perhaps we don't have to say like the most famous content out there, because that's also dependent on luck. But good quality content, not the best quality content, good quality content. They follow the same rules, no matter if this is theater, if this is TV or movies, they have to follow these rules. We have to give the audience something to connect with. We have to tell them a story. We have to make our characters feel a lot of different things, and they have to learn something through this process, and there has to be an objective, there has to be a goal, there has to be believable conflicts out there, and escalation and tension. We just have to have those things if we want to connect with the audience. So for me, it doesn't matter who is holding the keys to the doors of distribution today. The content has to be good content anyway.
Great. Thank you, Laura. I think we are way past our time, and I think you have other appointments right now. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing all this valuable information. This was amazing. We can't thank you enough for spending all this time with us and answering all our questions and things like that. We look forward for another session where we could actually discuss more whenever you're free. And, thanks again, Laura. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. This was awesome. It's super great. And of course, I love to talk about screenwriting. And as you've been able to see throughout this hour, I mean, I love to talk screenwriter. I love to teach screenwriting. I love to inspire other people to become screenwriters, because I don't think it's something that just a few people can do. Like, anyone can become a screenwriter. And we can see that also in Hollywood. We have all these writers, they write like the same movie all over again. We have Die Hard 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have Little Weapon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have Fast and the Furious 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 till number 9, number 10. So anyone can become a screenwriter if you understand the rules of the game. Like, anyone can do that. So it is a tough business. Of course it is a tough business, but if you profession and if you have stories that you want to tell, there's a way out there that you can make it happen. Even though today with YouTube and these free streaming services, it's like you can say something and film it and put it out there immediately. Like, you are not going to start making money right away, but you have now the channel and the opportunity to put your content out there and to practice and to become better with each thing that you do. So this is the best time for new screenwriters and for independent filmmakers to go out there and make their voice heard. So as long as we understand that the audience is going to be wanting some specific things that you have to give them, like this what I was saying, this solid character with a goal that goes through emotions and has a flaw and has to learn something. As long as you give them that, the rest is creative. You can do whatever you want, and now you have the channels to express that. So I think this is a very good time for screenwriters and for filmmakers. So keep it up there and keep the practice and keep learning, and also understand that this is an ever evolving process. There is no time where you're going to say, okay, this is enough. This is the last thing I will ever do, because the creative process never ends. So as you finish one process, you're going to want to do another project, and you work on that project, and feel free to ask other people to tell you, to give you feedback, and ask questions, and let your stories be out there. Let the people talk about your stories. Don't get frustrated when you get a bad feedback. Don't get frustrated when you make a mistake. It's all about the process. And it's a never-ending process. So as long as you understand that and you take this as playing a game, it's going to be easier, and you're going to get better every day.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you, Laura, for that. And maybe can you just give me one like a last tip for the like upcoming screenwriters, like which you would suggest them, like which they can which will be helpful for them if they're pursuing this career in their life.
I'm sorry, I lost you there. Can you repeat the question?
Just a suggestion for the upcoming script writers who want to pursue this field as a screenwriter, as a script writer. So can you suggest any tips for them, like any for our students and for this thing?
Well, just what I was saying right now. It's the first thing that we need to understand is that this is a process, and of course, when we put our creativity there, it's like we are giving birth to a child, and no one likes their child to be criticized, and no one likes something that made me feel so many things. When I put it out there to someone come and say, okay, this is crap, I don't understand it. So no one likes to be insulted by the work. But when you think about it, we as an audience also do that with the movies and the content that we see, even though we don't talk directly to the filmmakers. It's like we see a movie in Netflix, we don't like it, we say, okay, this is crap, and we turn the TV off. And perhaps we are not face to face, but we are really criticizing a lot of things of the content out there. So we have to understand that the same thing is going to happen to us. As we put our content there are going to be a lot of people who's not going to like our content, and that's okay. They are free to feel whatever they want to, and they are free to feel, and they are free to like, and they are free to judge our work as we are with the work of others. So that's okay. They are free to criticize our work, and we have to understand that is going to be part of a process. That first movie is going to take us to another step where we are going to learn, and then we are going to learn some more, and then we're going to make some more content, and we are going to be learning some more. So this is a continuous process. The fastest that we learn that this is a process, the fastest we deal with frustration and with the opinion of others, the greater we're going to become. So just keep it up, keep the hard work, keep learning, keep writing, and it's all a process of ever evolving. So that's the best advice I can give you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for that.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for coming here. Have a nice evening. And thanks again, Laura. And you have a good day. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, Laura.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you,
time.
Laura, for coming here. Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
Ma'am.
you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Supriya, for moderating this evening today again.
Thank you. Thank you, Supriya. Thank you, Shailesh. Thank you, Mohit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good night.